Hello and welcome to the weekly wind-up with me, Kyle Warwick. My guest for today's show is Colin Anderson. Colin is here to discuss developments in the opposition to Yorkshire Water's plans for the Butterley Spillway in Marsden. And we will also be looking at a film by Ayo Akiode on domestic abuse. On to some local news. Reported in the Huddersfield Examiner on the 13th of October, George Osborne's business rates revolution will be worth more than £100 million to Kirklees, according to government figures. But if the system was introduced this year, Kirklees Council would be £32 million worse off, says a senior council official. The Chancellor has announced that local authorities will be allowed to keep all the cash they raise for non-domestic rates instead of handing it to the Treasury and getting part of it back in the form of a grant. Official government figures show Kirklees is due to collect £105 million in business rates in the financial year 2015 to 16, once collection expenses are deducted, suggesting the borough would be more than £100 million better off if it was allowed to keep it all. But David Smith, Director of Resources at Kirklees, said the plan was likely to result in the authority having to take on more service burdens as the grant from Whitehall is phased out and business income rises. But while councils with thriving business centres are likely to be much better off as a result of the changes, there are fears that smaller, less commercial areas might miss out. Councillor Graham Turner, Cabinet Member for Resources at Kirklees, said the proposals would leave the authority worse off. If central government gives us more responsibility, that potentially means there will be less money and that will put services under threat. Stephen Lee, Head of Policy at the Huddersfield-based Mid-Yorkshire Chamber of Commerce, said businesses and councils need to see more details of the proposals, but added, what it does is enable local authorities to be more ambitious about attracting inward investment and encouraging businesses to come to their part of the world as opposed to somewhere else. First off this week, we are going to take a look at a film by Ayo Akiode. Reports of domestic abuse towards the male half of the population have steadily been increasing over the past few years, and the subject is starting to lose some of its taboo status in the media. This can only be a good thing as men speak out about the abuse they have been subject to. However, for many suffering the abuse, it can still be seen as a point of shame. Ayo has gone out to investigate further.
Anyone can become a victim of domestic violence, but not everyone can accept it or even realise that they are experiencing it, especially men. Did you know that an average of 30 men are killed each year as a result? Statistics show that 1 in 6 men will be a victim of domestic abuse. There are 8 different forms of domestic violence, some of them being financial, emotional, and even psychological. In the Kirklees area alone, a staggering percentage of more than 18% of women and 2.5% of men aged between 16 and 59 have experienced at least one incident of sexual abuse. Domestic violence amongst teenagers are in many ways similar to the abuse faced by many adults, in the sense that the behaviour of the perpetrators are identical: controlling, demanding and manipulative. As well as support for women and children and teenagers, there is now a male victim support worker provided by Pennine Domestic Violence Group, where support is available for gay, bisexual, heterosexual and transgender. Police receive an emergency call every 3 minutes from a male victim. What are your thoughts?
It can happen. I mean, I've had it happen to me before, and it's horrible to go through it. It really is. But the police should respond, even if it's a male victim, just as effectively as they should if it's a female victim. I didn't cope very well with it. It affected me mentally and physically. I lashed out, and when I got out of that relationship, that's when I sought the help I needed. I went to see my doctor. He prescribed antidepressants and therapy, counselling for abuse victims. So yeah, I do believe a lot of people, many men and women included, will stereotype men as the abusers in a relationship because they don't want to see or hear or acknowledge that a woman can be just as abusive as a guy can be.
I think that's quite shocking, because I thought like women would get phone the police up more. I didn't realise that it would be that high, because I thought it was quite low domestic violence, but I never knew it was that high. I guess I would obviously talk to someone like trusted, like a friend, or because I'm at uni, I'll probably might talk to a teacher, and then if it's really serious, I might go to the police. But I don't really know really. I guess emotional, or what's the other one? No, emotional is the only one I can think of. I think generally, like in the media, is male more, the people who abuse them, but yeah, so yeah.
It's quite shocking really. You always think that it's more the females that get abused. I thought it'd be really more like once a day kind of thing. Yeah, it's just shocking. Thinking deep into it, I'd probably go and tell somebody first, maybe then I think I'd find it hard to go to the police, just because there's quite a taboo about males being abused. Yeah, I find it hard, but I'd probably go in the end to the police, obviously, if it got onto a physical level. Apart from being hit and stuff, there's always whether they're over controlling, mental abuse. There's very, very little out there that says that men get abused too. I've seen the odd advert, but I still don't think that there's enough that shows that men actually get abused. Obviously, by the stats that you've got there, 3 minutes every a call's made. It's, like I said, shocking.
So if you're feeling isolated, alone, or bullied of the physical or psychological nature, today you can put an end to it and seek help. For more information, call 0800 052 7222.
Thank you to Ayo for that. Remember, you can contact the weekly wind-up at info@kirkleeslocaltv.com, or you can tweet us at the weekly wind-up, and you can also contact us on Facebook, search Kirklees Local TV. Join us after the break.
However large or small your business, attracting new customers requires dedication and a lot of patience. Just like fishing, but you also need the right gear. Rods, reels, lines, hooks,
sinkers, lures, tackle box, tackle bag, net, bait, gas gloves, clothes, pocket knife, lunch.
Or you could simply advertise with KLTV. Online, grow your business and your clientele. KLTV, your vision made reality. Should have gone to KLTV.
And welcome back. Before we go on to our next major topic, that of Butterley Spillway, let's have some more local news from our area. Reported in the Huddersfield Examiner on the 15th of October, experts from Huddersfield University have made a breakthrough to reduce baby deaths in Africa. The 6 academics have done it all through a simple mobile device that can be part attached to a newborn with a band, which they hope will warn health workers up to 40 miles away if a problem arises. The team initially created WAR, that is Wearable Anytime Anywhere APGAR, within 7 hours after entering a university design contest called Honeypot, which this year focused on infant mortality. One team member, Dr. Julia Meaton, a senior lecturer in the business school and course leader for the MSc in Risk, Disaster and Environmental Management, said, "It's a text-based surveillance service box which transmits live data via the sensory bands to old mobile phones, which are used by a lot of people in Africa. These sensors evaluate a new baby's pulse rate and breathing patterns, two key criteria of the APGAR score, which is used to measure a baby's health. We did want it to be able to look at the other criteria of babies that are babies' reflex responses, their activity rate and their colour, but the technology to do that isn't available yet. So we've created a box for the sensor, which includes on the side simple pictorial displays to help parents recognise worrying symptoms in these categories. The team's idea has been so successful that it has been selected as one of 10 inventions in the global UNICEF Wearables for Good Design contest. 2 winners will be selected on November the 12th. The winners will win approximately £10,000 and mentoring from UNICEF and the digital design companies Arm and Frog to turn their device into a reality. Now on to our second topic. The historic and spectacular Butterley Spillway lies in the village of Marsden. Used as an overflow to Butterley Reservoir, the sweeping cascade cuts a swathe through the Wessenden Valley that is as much a part of the village as Cuckoo Day, Jazz Festival, Riverhead Beer and Sheep in the Road. Under a proposal from Yorkshire Water, this stunning feat of Victorian engineering, designed by the great Thomas and Charles Hawksley, is under threat. We asked people of Huddersfield how important it is to maintain Kirklees' historical structures.
It's very important. It's historic and it tells us where we are, where we've been. History becomes very important indeed.
I've not lived in Kirklees all my life. I've lived in and around different places because I was brought up in a military background. So when we settled in the Kirklees area, and there's a lot of heritage that I call my heritage in Kirklees. I walk my dog up to Castle Hill and that's a heritage site. And to me, it's something I'll always treasure because it's Kirklees, it's what makes it Kirklees.
I think it's extremely important when people come here, visitors, friends who've never been to Huddersfield before, you show them they're absolutely amazed. The Lion Chambers, the Town Hall, the George Hotel, the Railway, Castle Hill, yes, all these places are extremely important for our heritage.
I think it's extremely important to maintain and we need to keep a hold of our heritage.
Now I'm joined by Colin Anderson, who has taken up the fight to save the magnificent feat of engineering that is Butterley Spillway. Welcome to the show, Colin.
Thank you, Carl. It's good to be here.
Oh, thank you for joining us. Now, a lot of people there were talking about different sites from around the Kirklees area. First of all, where would you rank the spillway amongst some of those that were mentioned, and how important do you think it is to maintain the site?
Well, it's a very important structure and a landmark in Kirklees. Where does it rank? I think it ranks right up the very top for Kirklees and most certainly for Marsden. It's a massive tourist attraction. It's the pride of local people. It's a national treasure. I mean, if I tell you, Carl, that the Victorian Society very recently listed it as one of the 10 most endangered Victorian structures in the country. That's how proud we should be in Kirklees of this magnificent spillway.
Yeah, absolutely. How much credibility do you feel there is in Yorkshire Water's proposal? Now, I know that there's an ongoing process and there's only certain amounts that you can say. But is that something that you can talk about, would you say?
Well, I can only really say I am stuck in a process and I'm limited on what I can say. But it is a concrete solution to increasing the flow capacity of the spillway. Now, that would actually destroy the heritage value and the aesthetic value of the spillway. All of the values that are really important to local people, visitors and tourists.
Where are you in your defence of the spillway? What sort of stage are you at?
Right, well I've developed an alternative new scheme and I wanted to present this scheme as an alternative option at the planning inquiry in January. But the whole judicial process that has since developed arises from the fact and my claim that I was prevented by the inspector at the planning inquiry from presenting the alternative new option that would result in less harm to the spillway. It would retain the heritage value of the spillway and its aesthetic. So people now and in future generations could continue to enjoy the spillway.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a Marsden lad myself. I grew up in Marsden, not 250, 300 yards away from the spillway itself, so I know it very, very well. I mean, as a child I walked, and a teenager I walked my parents' dogs around there. I've used it for sledging. It is very, it's one of those things for me. I didn't appreciate it until it was under threat. And I think there's a lot of that in Marsden. Have you got that vibe from the people within Marsden?
I can only say yes. I mean, I'll go on to that more in shortly. But there's another famous person who was born and brought up in Marsden, and you probably know him. It's Simon Armitage, the poet, a national treasure, as the spillway is a national treasure. And I'd love to quote from Simon, because his words can do more than I can do to describe the importance of the spillway. Can I just read these? Yeah. Can I just put my glasses on?
By all means.
And Simon, who's a Professor of Poetry at University of Sheffield, an incoming Oxford Professor of Poetry, he says, and bearing in mind that he was born and grew up in Marsden and enjoyed the spillway and Butterley as much as you did. Absolutely. Like the growing number of other people, I'm very concerned about proposed changes to the Butterley Spillway. It isn't just a functional device, but a feat of engineering brilliance, a thing of great beauty and a monument to those people who worked on its construction. It represents a craft and technique unique to the period. To contemplate its replacement with something concrete and ugly would be a tragedy. Butterley Spillway is Marsden's great landmark. To begin dismantling the village's past would be to jeopardise its future as a tourist destination, a site of cultural importance and a place to live.
What he's said about the future of the village, I mean, Marsden has seen in recent years, since the 80s, the breakdown of the mill industry, and really has become reliant on things like Cuckoo Day and Jazz Festival and the tourist trade that comes in over the summer. And it would beg a belief really if we were left without something that brings in quite a lot of people. How can the public get involved? Now I know you took up the baton and took over from Diane, I believe it was, and a group that were running the Save Butterley Spillway group. How can people get involved in helping if they wanted to?
Okay, well I set out to raise £12,000 towards my legal fees, and incredibly, and thanks to huge generosity and support of local people and organisations in Marsden and the Colne Valley, elsewhere in the country, from the United States of America, believe it or not, expats in America. We've managed to raise over £11,000 towards the £12,000. So we're nearly there.
Absolutely.
We're nearly there.
Fantastic.
And if I can say that there was one fundraising event at the Riverhead pub in Marsden, £800 was raised in one night. You mentioned the Jazz Festival. We had buckets at the festival, and people who hardly know Marsden were putting £10 notes into the bucket. They could understand the significance and importance of Butterley Spillway. Marsden History Society has only recently put in £500. How fantastically generous is that? So, what can the public do? Well, we're still fundraising towards my legal fees, or at least I am. And I can only point the public to go to a website, www.spillway.co.uk, and people can go on to Crowd Justice website and make a donation today. And hopefully we can reach that £12,000 target to cover my legal fees for my defence. So that's what people can do. And if they go onto the Spillway site, they will get a whole load of information and background about the Spillway, about Butterley, about the whole series of dams that make up and reservoirs that make up the Wessenden Valley. It is a truly, if no one has ever been to the Wessenden Valley in the Dark Peak above Marsden, please go. It really is remarkable, and they will never forget the experience. But it is an incredible spillway. I brought some images along to show how great a structure it is. It is built completely out of Yorkshire gritstone, and it fits with the geology of the landscape, the topography of the landscape. It is beauty and function combined as an engineering solution, as a spillway to save the people from Marsden from flooding. It's done that for over 100 years. It can do so for many more years into the future.
Indeed, I mean, I think that's like something that maybe you're not able to say, but something that I certainly will say. It's something that's kind of endemic on society at the moment, is companies thinking of short-term profit rather than effect to society as a whole, and it's something that we're seeing across business really. And certainly that stone, I mean, you've got a picture there that highlights it almost perfectly. It's you know, the way that the moss grows on that stone, it basically blends into the environment almost, and has become totally a part of its own environment.
It's almost as if it was carved out of the landscape.
Absolutely,
isn't it? It is incredible. And when it's dry, it just shimmers and glows in the light. But it fits in with that topography, the shape of the landscape. And you can see on that picture there where it's flowing with water. Yeah. And what people love about that is the whole aesthetic. It's the acoustic. The different sound. I've referred to it as a piano with different musical sounds. And it is a bit like that. Yeah. Because of the difference in the cascade. It's like a sweep. It's a sweep within the landscape and a cascade, and of different levels. Yeah. And when the water flows down, in terms of visually and in terms of the sound, it is extraordinary. Absolutely. It's unique.
I mean, it's quite difficult to tell on those pictures there, but there are different sizes of steps as you go down the spillway. I mean, it's you know, I mean, I much prefer it when the water's going down it, but something that is a pleasure is to, when there isn't water going down it, to walk all the way up to the top, and then you just come over the crest and the reservoir's there in front of you, and it's such a beautiful view at the top.
That's absolutely true. And my proposed solution that I put forward would retain a flow down, so it wouldn't be making the structure redundant. As an engineer, that would be anathema to me, in a way. It would be. And you would lose a lot of the real meaning and aesthetic and value of the spillway. It should be functional. But the remaining flow, my option allows for the diversion of that flow. So it wouldn't result in it being redundant.
Yeah. I mean, something that people maybe don't realise, and it's something that it took quite a bit of reading on for me to realise, is that the gentleman that was heavily involved in the design, Thomas Hawksley, was a genius of his age. I mean, he is the reason that we have water running out of our taps.
Absolutely,
which is, I mean, that for me is, you know, like, to have that connection with somebody that is so stand out in British scientific history, to have that in my village is something that is a real point of pride for me. And for me, it should be something that, you know, is integral in the history of water engineering. And Yorkshire Water should have pride in the fact that they have something in their care. And that for me is the main word, their care. Absolutely. They should care.
I couldn't agree more, Carl. And Thomas Hawksley, as you rightly say, he was a prominent reservoirs engineer, known throughout the country. And the whole of the Butterley Reservoir Dam Spillway took 15 years to construct. And he designed it. It was for the Huddersfield Corporation to provide potable drinking water for the people of Huddersfield. So it's a very important functional structure. But in terms of its design, Hawksworth had this incredible knack of designing his work, like the viaducts we see, the aqueducts that we see in Yorkshire, of really reflecting the geology and topography and landscape. So it was an architectural and engineering triumph. And we should be proud of it, and we should be celebrating it, and not thinking, well, let's take out all the masonry and fill with concrete. You know, this is our heritage. This is the heritage for the future, and it needs to be protected. I agree with you.
Indeed. Well, Colin, I'm afraid that's all we've got time for on this topic, but thank you very much for your time. If you would like to get in contact with the Weekly Wind-Up with anything you've heard on today's programme so far, you can do so again by email info@kirkleeslocaltv.com. You can find us on Twitter by searching at the Weekly Wind-Up, and you can also find us on Facebook by searching Kirklees Local TV. And again, that website, www.spillway.co.uk. There's masses of information on there about the spillway and its history and the designers who've been integral in its building. And I would urge you to go and find out as much as you can, because it's such a massive part of Huddersfield's history. Now we're going to move on to our final local news topic for this week, reported in the Huddersfield Examiner on the 12th of October. Even though her long auburn locks are her crowning glory, young Stephanie Cleary has had them lopped off to help less fortunate children. She has had almost a foot of a haircut to help the Little Princess Trust, which provides wigs for cancer-hit youngsters. And she has raised more than enough in sponsorship to pay for 2 real hair wigs. Proud mum Laurie Shield said of the 9-year-old, in March she walked in and announced she was cutting her hair off for the Little Princess Trust. She wanted to give her hair to a little girl who had none of her own. Stephanie was inspired by an aunt losing her hair through cancer treatment. It costs around £350 for a real hair wig, and so far Stephanie has raised £754 in sponsorship. She has been helped by her older sister Jessica, who has been doing fundraising of her own. The cut took place in Stephanie's classroom at St Patrick's RC Primary School in Elland, with roughly 11 inches taken off. To start with, her aunt Rachel cut off one plait, and her granddad Paul Cleary the other, in memory of another aunt, Nessie, who was also a cancer sufferer. A professional hairdresser did the rest. It is a bold move, but as Stephanie says, her hair will grow back. I would like to thank Colin for joining us. Remember, you can contact the Weekly Wind-Up at info@kirkleeslocaltv.com. You can tweet us at the Weekly Wind-Up, and you can also contact us on Facebook, search Kirklees Local TV. Thank you and goodbye.